Well, this should now be working. Good evening, everyone. It's episode 192 of Rail Natter. Tonight we will be doing a page turn through the Salisbury Rail Crash report. Hello, hopefully you can all hear me. Before we do that, I would have been talking about the COVID stats. However, the DFT, putting the potential for conspiratorialism to one side, the DFT have taken the feed offline. They've withdrawn the National Rail with Elizabeth line time series from the published data tables. Ostensibly, this is due to the issues that are associated with that data set, thanks to the way that Elizabeth line is being incorporated into the overall National Rail statistics. There's a good piece kind of talking about that I'll refer to in a minute by John Bull over at London Reconnections, but it means that really the only source of data we have is thankfully recently released ORR passenger rail usage bulletin, which has loads of good data in it, where you can see kind of pretty. This is filtered data, as it were. You can see that we're kind of getting back to where we were pretty recently in terms of pre and post COVID statistics. So that 400 million passenger journeys mark. Yeah, you can see that the pretty rapid growth trajectory that we're looking at there. Very rapid spring back, relatively speaking. And if you want to have a kind of a flick through those numbers, John Bull, his piece in London Reconnections, well worth going and having a look. Have a look at that, have a read. It might be nice to get John Bull on an episode actually to talk about this. In any case, we're going to go back through that ORR bulletin in a couple of episodes, I think, because it'd be worth kind of digging through and getting a feel for it. In any case, this week we are looking at the RAIB rail accident report. We will be looking at the collision between passenger trains at Salisbury Tunnel Junction. There's a small picture here showing crashed trains, but yes, I should say there will be a content warning coming up momentarily. In any case, everyone, welcome to tonight's show. As the Intercity 225 fades into darkness, we must start with some news. In fact, before we start with the news, we're going to briefly talk about Britain's most embarrassing moment so far. But before we do that, I'm going to make my large face appear. Hello, everyone. In fact, I'm missing a piece of technology here. Wait for it. Ta-da. It's a bit better. Hello, how are you all? It's Big Face. Yes, I'm here going Big Face because there's two pieces of technology that I need to resolve. Don't worry about that. One of them is actually bringing up the crash report, which I forgot to tee up, so that's good, which I've now done. Good, marvellous. The other is unhiding this. There's a thing I need to unhide and put down at the bottom of the news. There we go. Marvellous, sorry. We are prepared. I hope everyone's well. As ever, if you've got questions, at me in the thing. It's a proper live episode, so you can all get involved. A unique feature. Does anyone know any other podcast in the UK that does this, by the way, where it is basically live? I always look bleached in the thing, because the thing is in the thing, and the thing does the... I don't have a proper, nice circle thing, so it's a bit of sodium lights shining onto me. Anyway, right, let's get rid of my face. Oh no, we don't want to get rid of it. We want this to be the thing that appears. There we are. Get rid of my face. Anyway, right, let's talk about Elon Musk and Rishi Sunak. Exceptionally embarrassing moment for the UK is Rishi Sunak interviewing Elon Musk. That's all I'm going to say about that. Go and listen to the Trash Future about it recently. It's very funny. Ha 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 ha. It was, I think, basically most of what the interview consisted of. Forced laughter from our Prime Minister, degrading himself. Horrifying. Anyway, more degrading of government, but actually it's the COVID inquiry which is unleashing just an enormous amount of stuff we already knew but is still painful to reread. The decision makers were a homogenous group, not enough thinking about single parents, too much about football, hunting, shooting and fishing, is a quote here from Tom Whipple, here, for the science editor for The Times, I think. who's been doing threads, kind of keeping it in touch with the inquiry here. And this is the quote from one of the leading women civil servants who are having to deal with the mess. I'm going to read the whole quote, in fact, not just that small bit. In terms of the policy response, the exclusion of a female perspective led to significant negative consequences, including the lack of thought given to childcare in the context of school closures. There's a serious lack of thinking about domestic abuse and the vulnerable, about carers and informal networks for how people look after each other in families and communities. There is not enough thinking about the impact on single parents of some of the restrictions. There is a disproportionate amount of attention given to more male pursuits in terms of the impact of restrictions, and then the lessening of the same, football, hunting, shooting and fishing. There is a lack of guidance for women who might be pregnant or were pregnant, and what those who were key workers should do. This is particularly significant in education and the NHS, given the demographics of their workforces. Yeah, this is not unique to... hello, Railway Thinker, by the way. Nice to see you. Some university offers fantastic news. Hello, Katie. Hello, everyone in the chat. Sorry, this is just a description of the state of the top end of government and government decision making at the moment. Absolutely true within transport as well. But this is the state of our current government in the UK. This is when we talk about why you need to have diverse teams. This is why. In any case. Talking of cripplingly incompetent and malicious actors, Mark Harper here, just talking about introducing minimum service levels during rail strikes. As many people pointed out, as you can see, his tweet was enormously ratioed. The government cannot achieve minimum service levels on the railways, so why should why is it making out that the unions are somehow the problem here? Yes, they aren't, and actually, incidentally, happening at this point, the RMT is currently winning their strike. They're currently kind of reaching a provisional agreement. Things are very much moving, but the RDG is essentially attempted to bring the RMT to an agreement with kind of improved pay, a freezing of or a taking job losses off the table, that sort of thing. Keep in touch with the RMT feeds to get the latest detail on that and where things are with ballots and so on. So Harper trying to make out there's a win. Actually, the RMT are very much winning this one, quite dramatically, in fact. Most wrong competition latest. So here's a particularly entertaining piece in The Economist. Never knowingly correct The Economist, but this is a particularly good one, which is this is the article header here, is how car addiction makes America fairer and more efficient, with a little funny little tagline, room to vroom. Obviously this is just gibberish, absolute gibberish. Once again, The Economist being told the extent to which this was absolute gibberish. America is far more car reliant than any other big country, averaging roughly 2 vehicles per household. This in turn is linked to many ills. But there are also some surprising benefits. Was this written by a car? The Economist here really not doing a great job. Not doing a great job at suggesting it has any legitimacy or integrity at this point. Shocking. Anyway. Let's talk about some depressing news, actually, which is Britain's ostensibly best metro fleet, the Class 777s, the Stadlers, the level boarding providing trains, are really struggling with reliability at the moment. It appears that the particularly they're having particular issues with the IPEMUs, the battery element of the fleet, to which my response would be, not wire, but shove the third rail down to get to deal with the extension. This is a bit upsetting, really, to see this. I hope Stadler they've had a long time, thanks to the union back and forth. They've had a long time to get these trains working properly. So it's upsetting that has not happened. I think Stadler are responding to say that they're trying to do better, but yeah, this is upsetting, and come on, train manufacturers need to step up a bit. But the trouble is, why pay a huge amount of attention to a country that has such a small pipeline? They can kind of cope with some of the pain on a small fleet like this. The 777s can use wires, yes, because they're a modern interoperable train, so they have the wells within which you can put a pantograph, and it doesn't take much to convert them. But yes, issues with the 777. So keep paying attention to that. The Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport is not happy. Yeah, is not a happy bunny at this point. So why is this? Well, it's because HS2. This is not the first of the continued rippling effects of the HS2 cancellation. Yeah, here's Richard Clinic pointing out the CILT, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transportation, has published a 10-point plan, and it's a bit fiery. They're not very happy. This 10-point plan. Not all of it is actually a plan. Well-informed independent inquiry should be set up to establish what went so badly wrong with HS2. The answer, of course, being, well, not actually that much. This should be led by the individuals who delivered HS1 on time and under budget, supported by seasoned rail professionals. Yeah, they're not really comparable, but okay, I can see what they're driving at. I could give you the answer in an hour or less, and indeed have and will continue to do so. We recommend in the strongest possible terms the alignment of HS2 Phase 2 be protected against future needs and not abandoned as government proposes. Number 3, without HS2 Phase 2, West Coast Main Line north of Lichfield will be dysfunctional and cannot provide the much needed connectivity improvements for the North Wales and Scotland. Major bottlenecks will have a highly damaging impact on high-speed services to Manchester, Liverpool, Scotland, and North Wales, and on freight. West Coast main freight artery. Yep. We recommend an urgent review of options to resolve West Coast mainline constraints. In particular, the college staff with thrombosis in this major economic artery for UK PLC. I hate that term, but anyway. The remainder of the 36 billion released from HS2, which we know isn't a thing. I wish people wouldn't make that feel real by repeating it, should be spent on infrastructure investment for the long-term benefit of the UK economy and environment, not on short-term revenue items which do nothing to address the nation's strategic infrastructure needs. That's pretty punchy. Candidate investment schemes should be prioritised objectively and ranked by their benefit-cost ratio, which should be calculated using an internationally approved cost of carbon to ensure maximum decarbonisation is delivered. Interesting. A focus on freight and logistics was notably absent from the HS2 announcement. We recommend that much greater emphasis is placed on this economically vital sector. I mean, yes. Point 9, specifically we recommend that the remaining single-track sections of the Felixstowe to Midlands and North route serving Britain's biggest container port should be doubled in the route electrified throughout. Absolutely. And then point 10, a thing that I fully agree with, we further recommend that another 600 route miles across the UK should be electrified, estimated to cost around 2 billion, barely 5% of the 36 billion released from HS2 to allow 95% of rail freight to be electrically hauled with zero carbon emissions. And then the last thing they say, which really should be an additional point, but it says CILT hopes that incoming administration will reinstate the long-term strategy underpinned by HS2 and move forward with the 10-point plan. So basically saying we don't expect the government to stay the same by the next general election. Pretty punchy. Anyway, meanwhile, the fire sale of land gets doused. Yes, Sunak faces very likely legal challenge. Yeah, look, the rail industry and other groups will likely take the government to court under a judicial review to stop them selling off the land, which was an inevitability, frankly. What's fun though is that everyone's saying fire sale. Now, who came up with that? Who used that term? And is everyone else spiteful fire sale? Who? Oh yeah, that's right. It's me. When I was interviewed by Helen Pitt for The Guardian, Dennis said, "That's me." Hello, everyone. I knew Sunak would cancel. What's my voice again? I've done this before, haven't I, where I have to quote myself and use my own voice. What's my voice? I knew Sunak would cancel HS2 to Manchester, but I didn't expect him to be so spiteful that he would authorise the sell-off of land on the route. There are barely any votes in lifting the safeguarding. It's pure salting the earth to make it extremely hard for Labour to build it. What will happen now is essentially a fire sale. Oh, look, that's me. I said that. The land is not going to be returned to nature. It's going to be developed on. That will make it much more expensive and much more complex should any future government want to build it. That's the level of Scottish accent I wish I had more naturally, but it seems to, it ebbs and flows. What can I say? Anyway, that's me saying fire sale, and it's funny that lots of places have been using that fire sale term when I came up with it. It's little old me. Anyway, here's Paul Clifton usefully tweeting out Hugh Merriman here. I always give Hugh the Welsh pronunciation. I don't know why, just because he spells it the Welsh way, so I will say it the Welsh way. Hugh Merriman here. I convened the HS2 task force this morning with colleagues from a bunch of other people. You know, what's interesting is, as Paul Clifton says, I don't see too many familiar faces drawn from top-tier rail industry professionals. Yeah, it's interesting that the rail industry seems to be manifestly excluded from this process of fixing HS2. I wonder why that might be. Related to who is his pet project that he seems to be having some success over, which is creating the new Bradford station, the new Bradford through station. So this is kind of this. Well, what are the details? And this has come from a government press release. So what are the details? Well, firstly, there's the DfT building on its promise of building a brand new railway station at Bradford by providing 400,000 for the local authority to kickstart master planning on the project. Okay, 400,000 is not a huge amount. That's like you get a half chunky consultancy report for that. Fine. That's about as much as you expect for a single master planning report. 400k, fine. Work would consider how the new station could best support regeneration. Yeah, fine. And then that'll feed into the business case. Fine. That doesn't really mean much. This is a statement that there's going to be £2 billion to build the station. That's a lot of money for a railway station. You know, crikey. It'll be a new line, so that's the connections. So they're talking about these sort of connections to get it to Bradford. Incidentally, Bradford makes it quite difficult for them to sensibly continue with their Stanage Tunnel, Diggle Tunnels plan. But anyway, so there's some stuff here, and then this is on top of the further 2.5 billion they're supposedly supporting West Yorkshire Mass Transit with within the Network North stuff. So, this is some of the stuff that's within Network North. It's none of it to be trusted, all of it to be treated with great cynicism. But this is a thing that is being progressed, and at the moment, will it continue to be progressed? We'll see. Who knows? Anyway, sorry, that's me sipping a cup of tea. Actually, it's coffee, decaf. Anyway, more bad news. British Steel set to cut up to 2,000 jobs in furnace closure plan. This is bad news. What's also bad news is that the closure of the 4 blast furnaces at Scunthorpe is very likely, not certain, but very likely to mean that'll be the end of the production of steel rails for railways in Britain. That's a problem. We don't have a small railway network. We have one of the largest railway networks in the world. We require an enormous volume of railway rails, and having to put those through the Channel Tunnel or via a ship instead of having them shipped out directly from a manufacturing plant makes no sense. It makes zero sense. And that's precisely what this means. I wrote about this because this was sort of under discussion quite a while ago when British Steel was about to be in demise. In July 2019, I wrote a piece that wound up all the right people, suggesting it was pretty much on the nose, on the money rather. Yes, me writing for The Independent, talking about Network Rail putting in an offer for a bit of British Steel as it was being kind of torn apart. Anyway, there's plenty of detail in there about the closures of Mary, Bess, Anne and Victoria, and the implications on how much rail that would mean Network Rail have to source from elsewhere at lower quality and therefore with more likelihood to fail. And I don't mean failure necessarily from a safety perspective, but failure, these are the sorts of failures that would be picked up and have to be replaced, but that increases the burden on maintenance. So not an ideal situation, really. Here's some better news. Well, not for the staff, of course, but some generally better news for practical reality. Once again, as I keep saying, driverless cars will never exist. And here's the CEO of Cruise, which is kind of theoretically the only company actually practically pursuing this, or were the only company actually moving people around in driverless vehicles. Yes. And here's Gary Marcus, a kind of a tech person, talking about the fact that the Cruise vehicles, as so many people on Twitter kept trying to tell me that these are truly driverless, truly autonomous, it's quite clear from the statement that was made by the CEO that they are not and never were. This statement is quite interesting, so I'm going to pick into it. It's worth having a think about this. This is the Cruise CEO. Some relevant context follows. Cruise autonomous vehicles are being remotely assisted between 2 and 4% of the time on average in complex urban environments. So that means every time something happens, the remote driver is kicking in. This is low enough already that there isn't a huge cost benefit to optimizing much further. especially given how useful it is to have humans review things in certain situations. So again, this is basically pointing out what they're doing is they've just created fancy cruise control. It's just fancy cruise control. This is not driverless. It never will be driverless, and therefore all the proposed benefits of driverless will never exist. Which then begs the question: is this just a way to make, this is just going to make cars more expensive? So what's the value in it? Anyway, here we are. So lots of discussion about this is all off the. There's some news that this is related to. Yeah. So in terms of staffing, we are intentionally overstaffed given our small fleet size in order to handle localized bursts of remote assist demand. And that means that those people, a lot of whom will be in the global south, are all going to be sacked. Great. Yes, fantastic. These companies are awful. So yeah, Cruise, and then the news basically is that Cruise is beginning layoffs and getting rid of workers who support driverless operations, followed by some of the technicians related to driverless operations. This is because all of their cruise taxis have been, there was a stop order put on them, meaning firstly that they weren't allowed to operate, and secondly they weren't allowed to operate whilst taking cash, because of yet another absolutely appalling failure of their safety systems, where they dragged someone that they'd already run over under the vehicle as it pulled to the side of the road. Absolutely horrific situation. Once again, proving that that 2 to 4% technology, extra technology push to get, or not the technology push rather, that 2 to 4% of the time where the vehicles are driven by a person, the technology required to get through that, it will infinitely never exist. You will never reach a point where the technology can actually deal with deal with the vehicle, the road, deal with the challenges. So once again, vindicated, driverless cars never exist. On the subject of cars, a rather somber end to the news here. Yes, it's always worth digging through the news. There's always some interesting things to look at. I need to thin it out really, but this is a piece that's worth dwelling on for a moment, which is a piece by Tom Edwards looking at speaking to the parents and the horror that the parents are having to deal with from the crash in summer, where that massive Defender, the new Defender, rammed through into a school playground and hit a load of children and killed a load of children. It's an absolutely appalling incident, and it just when I say ban cars in urban areas, I don't mean that as a kind of an over exaggerated point. No, I literally mean there should be no cars anywhere near schools. There should be no cars anywhere near high density urban areas where you have high build-ups of pedestrians. There should be no cars anywhere near those areas, and actually we should be aiming to entirely exclude cars from city centres, entirely, and how that then gets dealt with in terms of accessibility for those who perhaps rely on a car as a mobility, it needs to be considered. But that is there is a long road to go on to understand. The baseline is absolutely exclude cars from these areas because they kill people. The next step then is, right, well, how do you manage the accessibility challenges? But the solution is not allow cars. The first step is ban the cars. Perhaps a controversial view, but I feel very strongly on this. Cars are not the solution. They are just absolutely not the solution for urban mobility. Horrifying. Anyway, I put in content warning because there are going to be descriptions and images from rail crashes in this episode. We are looking at a railway crash report, so it's kind of what you'd expect, I hope. In any case, we're going to look at it. We're going to get the RAIB crash report open. I'm going to make sure that the cursor is on so that you can see. Yeah, there's the mouse, lovely. So you can see the report. Let's go. This isn't going to be a long, slow one like the current report. The document's not as big in any case. In fact, let's quickly have a look. How many pages is it? We'll never know because they've updated and made, yet again, Adobe have updated their document and made it even worse. 113 pages. Don't worry, we're going to be flying through this. So, Salisbury, all the usual stuff. Preface, we've done RAIB reports before. Let's have a look down here. So there's the summary, but we'll come back to that. We're going to look at the detail. There's introduction. We've got definitions here. Fine. Up and down, often very confusing in this part of the country, so that's fine. There's some abbreviations we can explain. So summary of the accident. Let's talk about what happened. So Salisbury, we had the trains. There's some good diagrams explaining exactly what's going on in just a second. So, about 1843 on Sunday, the 31st of October, 2021. Train reporting number 1 Lima 53, the 1720 to Southwestern Railway service from Waterloo to Honiton. Collided with the side of train 1 Foxtrot 30, the 1708 Great Western Railway passenger service from Portsmouth Harbour to Bristol Temple Meads. Annoyingly, these trains are both Class 158s, so it's a little trickier for us to... So I'm going to refer to them as as the Southwestern and the Great Western. Even that's quite confusing. Oh, goodness. The SWR and the GWR, no, that's confusing. Looks like I might be sticking to reporting numbers. The Lima train versus the Foxtrot train. Maybe we go with that. The Lima train and the Foxtrot train. So the Lima train was travelling at approximately 50 miles an hour, 52 miles an hour, and the Foxtrot train was travelling at 20 miles per hour. The collision occurred at Salisbury Tunnel Junction, which is on the approach to Fisherton Tunnel near Salisbury in Wiltshire. Okay, fine. So there was the signalling was all signal had previously been protecting another train, which passed over the junction in the opposite direction less than a minute before the accident. Lima train passed this signal by around 200 metres before colliding with Foxtrot train, as we'll see in the next couple of figures. The impact of the collision caused the front two carriages of the Lima train and the rear two carriages of the Foxtrot train to derail. Both trains continued some distance into Fisherton Tunnel before the collision. Following the collision before they came to a stop. So here's the nice map kind of showing what's going on. I'll zoom in on this. So we've got this nice map showing what's going on. The Foxtrot train having kind of already made its way through, and then the Lima train coming through, the Foxtrot train going much slower, the Lima train going faster, and approaching the Fisherton Tunnel here. And you can see a nice zoomed in thing. Here's Fisherton Tunnel, Foxtrot train 20 miles an hour, Lima train going at 50 miles an hour, goes through the red signal and hits the train. So there we go. And here's some pictures of kind of what happened. So you can see here's the Lima train here, having kind of swept the Foxtrot train, which is in. You can see the picture here. You can see that it's come in, sideswept the Foxtrot train, the GWR train, in the tunnel, and by the damage at the cab end, see this. You can see the kind of the scale of the impact. It's a pretty hefty impact. A lot of damage to the cab end, and not, I believe the driver is okay, but certainly had life-changing injuries. So the thing is that both the trains were going in the same direction. So I'm going to go with the Lima train was from London. The Foxtrot train was coming from. No, wait a minute. Let's go back and describe that. The Foxtrot train was going from Portsmouth to Bristol. The Lima train was going from London Waterloo to Honiton. Yeah, you're right, Gareth. Sorry. People, right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to very briefly. So that's what's going on. There's the pictures. The accidents caused substantial damage to the track, the tunnel, and the surrounding rail infrastructure. The leading carriage of Lima train and the rear two carriages of Foxtrot train were damaged beyond economic repair. The rear two carriages of Lima train were less seriously damaged, and the leading two carriages of Foxtrot train were undamaged. The driver of the Lima train was seriously injured in the accident, spent 3 weeks in hospital. 13 passengers were also taken to hospital, with one suffering serious injuries. A further 10 passengers were treated at the scene for cuts and bruises. There were around 200 passengers and 5 members of staff on the two trains. Just saying, there was also an on-duty driver travelling as a passenger on the Foxtrot train when the accident occurred. So, right. There's that's what happened. I'm going to briefly go big face to answer some questions, because there's stuff flying around in the corner here. Yes, so here we go. Lots of people talking about alternatives for electric scooters. Yeah, for cars in areas. Nucker is saying nothing about the cabinet reshuffle. There's going to be 2 cabinet reshuffles. I've just recorded a podcast that'll be going out tomorrow morning, actually, talking about the reshuffle. You can hear my thoughts on that podcast. The brief podcast tomorrow morning will be going out. Battery tech, good enough now to get decent range on small personal scooters. Agreed. Lovely. Okay, fine. Right, good. Okay, fine. That's that. We've caught up with all of that. Let's get my miniaturized face in the top corner. Hello, everyone. So there's a bit of context. We're going to skip through the context, because I don't think it's hugely useful here. Staff involved, fine. Railway systems infrastructure involved, so the stuff about the signalling, fine. This is a page turner. It doesn't mean we read through every single page. So there's all the technology here. Talking about TPWS. The trains involved. One was a Class 159. It's a 3-car Class 159. That was the Lima train. And the Foxtrot train, the GWR, was a 2 Class 158s, both basically the same train, or the same type of train. They're very similar, yeah, as this says, Class 158 and 159 trains are very similar and constructed by welding aluminium extrusions together to form the body shells. The carriages which formed trains Lima and Foxtrot were built between 1989 and 1992 by British Rail Engineering Limited in Derby. They basically still build the trains like that today. These trains are not hugely close in design to the kind of the modern Aventra type, but they're not. There's some lineage in the kind of design and the construction approach. Both trains had wheel slide protection systems. That is relevant, so we'll kind of cover through that. So there's some more detail that'll get picked up as we go. External circumstances. On the day of the accident, this is relevant. On the day of the accident, an unusual type of weather front passed through the Salisbury area, resulting in a decrease of air pressure concentrated in a particularly small region of around 30 kilometres in diameter. This type of weather front, known as a mesoscale low pressure event, is a relatively rare occurrence in the UK, with only 10 similar events reported between 2009 and the day of the accident. This contributed to the worst recorded weather in terms of combined wind and rainfall data recorded by Met Desk and the Met Office so far that year. The weather front brought localised strong winds and heavy rain to the area, causing major disruption to the Wessex route. Weather stations located near to Salisbury recorded maximum wind gusts of approximately 73 miles an hour, peaking between 8 and 10 in the morning. In the 12 hours preceding the accident, around 21 millimetres of rainfall was recorded, some 36% of the average monthly rainfall for the year. So 36% of the month's rainfall fell in half a day before the accident. After the weather front had passed, the area remained windy for the rest of the day, with peak wind gusts of approximately 23 to 37 miles an hour. And radar imagery showed a band of drizzle passing over the up and down main lines in the area of Salisbury Tunnel Junction just before the passage of the Lima train. So this is relevant, very much relevant. Actually, yeah, someone else has pointed out a staff member started their career in 1962. The driver of the Lima train started his railway career in 1962 with British Railways, because they were British Railways back then, working as a fireman on steam locomotives and later as a train driver's assistant. He started driving trains for British Rail in 1982, and following privatisation of the industry was employed by South West Trains and latterly SWR as a driver and driving instructor. The driver had been based at Salisbury Depot for his entire career and moved to a part-time contract in 2019. That would suggest aiming towards retirement. Yes, although driver had been deemed competent, all competence assessments were in date in accordance with the company's trained driver competency management process. Okay, that's certainly relevant. At the time of the accident, the driver was working 2 days a week, driving Class 158, 159 trains. He was then scheduled to work 9 hours. Okay, fine. Yes. So those are possibly salient facts, as the nerd has just pointed out. Thank you, the nerd. Don't forget to at me in if you've got a question so I can spot these things. Yes, this sort of event, the weather event that we just described, as shown in these pictures, the Met Office radar data, these, they have occurred before, but they are rare. But these sorts of weather, global weirding means that these sorts of strange extreme weather events will become more frequent. So yes, this is climate change adjacent, Charles Taylor, as you have rightly pointed out. So the specifics of the events and the sequence of events. So let's go through. A train not involved in the accident struck a tree that had fallen onto the down main line. There we are. So this is was this discussion of. Lime was reopened. That was in the morning because this whole area had been suffering from extreme weather events, all sorts of stuff. This is one of 15 weather-related railway incidents that occurred on Network Rail's Wessex route that day. Fallen trees, flooding. Tree blocking the down main at the Salisbury portal of Fisherton Tunnel, so the other end of the tunnel to the one that the incident occurred. There's lots of stuff going on. Lots of Right, so the driver of train 1 Lima. So I'm just ensuring that okay, right. So there's lots of this is as ever these things get quite logistically complex. So let's hop. So let's hop forwards because I think the exploration of problems will explain. It was dark during. So we're going to hop forwards to paragraph 56. It was dark during the journey from Waterloo, and weather conditions were dry. Driver reported that he did not experience any wheel slip protection or wheel slide protection activity, nor any instances of low adhesion that affected the train's ability to slow, stop, or accelerate at stations. Between 1835 and 1840 hours, a band of drizzle moved southeastwards over the up and down main lines in the middle Wallop area. The UK is a stupid country, near Salisbury. The drizzle ceased in this area before the Lima train approached it. There we are. So this is interesting. The driver. So here we go. Approximately 1 minute 47 seconds before the accident, the on-train data recorder from the Lima train recorded that the traction power had been shut off. The train then coasted down the prevailing 1 in 169 gradient, towards signal Sierra Yankee 29 Romeo. 10 seconds later, OTDR data showed that the driver acknowledged the AWS warning horn for that signal. Signaling data and forward-facing CCTV showed that this signal was displaying a double yellow aspect. This is because that's the signal Sierra Yankee 29er was displaying a single yellow aspect, and the signal beyond was displaying a red aspect. So the standard, so double yellow, fine, progress, single yellow, warning, and that in advance of a stop signal. Driver approached Broken Cross Bridge with the train still coasting. Let's just skip up. Broken Cross Bridge is actually it's not on these diagrams, but it's kind of on the approach. So it's kind of on this approach. So yes. However, because he felt there was a potential for low adhesion, the driver stated that Broken Cross Bridge was the point where he would normally start braking in anticipation of stopping at signal Sierra Yankee 31. However, because he felt that there was a potential for low adhesion conditions at the location of the fallen tree, he decided to delay braking and use the fallen tree and associated debris as the marker point to start braking. The driver believed that this would still leave sufficient time and distance to bring the train to a stand before reaching the red stop signal. Fine, and there is CCTV footage showing the passage going past the cut back tree that the driver had already kind of struck. Fine, in a previous train, so on and so forth. Right. So, events during the accident. I don't know. It's not 100% that the driver. I think it is the same driver who had. I think it is the same driver who had the tree strike as now ends up. So that was 1 Lima 1-3, same driver. Branches have been cut back by the train driver in guard, very nice. Later observed by the driver of train 1 Lima 5-3. I'm not sure, possibly not. I'm not 100% on that. Anyway, that may become clearer and salient later. Coasted past that tree at 89 miles an hour. 8 seconds later, the driver acknowledged the AWS warning horn associated with the warning sign with the approaching 50 mile an hour speed restriction. The train travelling at 86 miles an hour, so it had been coasting, so it lost 3 miles an hour and around 1.5 kilometres beyond the double yellow. The driver, having not noticed the fallen tree, applied the brakes. Interesting. So the driver didn't notice the fallen tree and applied the brakes. At this point, the train was on a descending gradient of 1 in 169, approximately 780 metres on approach to the single yellow signal, and approximately 1.5 kilometres on approach to the red signal. Interesting. Okay. Evidence from the train's OTDR showed the driver initially selected brake step 1, followed almost immediately by brake step 2. When the driver applied the brakes, he stated that he immediately felt and observed that something was wrong. The driver stated that the feeling under his seat indicated that the train's wheels were sliding. The driver realised that the train's speed was not reducing as he expected. 6 seconds after his initial brake application, the driver made a Step 3 full-service brake application. This was followed a further 6 seconds later by the driver making an emergency brake application. Equipment fitted to the train recorded that the wheel slip protection system was active from the start of braking and throughout the various brake applications, and this would have demanded the sanding system to discharge sand onto the railhead. However, this had a limited effect on reducing the speed of the train. Yikes. So the Lima train then passed the yellow signal at approximately 77 miles an hour, so it's barely knocked off 10 miles an hour at this point. Still a lot of momentum. The train's TPWS detected that the train was travelling above the set speed for the approaching the signal, and it therefore commanded an emergency brake application. However, this had no additional effect as the driver had already made an emergency brake application by this point. So then the train passed the red signal, approached Salisbury Tunnel Junction, and about 40 seconds earlier, the F train had passed over the junction on the F train going the other way, thankfully, had passed. So there was what could have been a head-on collision was averted by seconds, which is frightening. But the F train going, because they're both Fs, normally letters would signify going in different directions, but because the trains go in and come back out of Salisbury, they're the same. It's a bit confusing. A messy network. In any case, the F train, that's our train that gets hit in a minute, was also approaching the junction going the other direction towards Salisbury. The driver of Lima 53 saw the Foxtrot train appear from the left and moved into the path of his train. Believing there was little he could now do to prevent a collision, he got out of his seat with the intention of exiting the cab into the saloon. However, in doing so, he tripped over his bag and fell onto the floor just before the collision occurred. Oh, bloody hell. As the Foxtrot train was entering Fisherton Tunnel, the Lima train collided with its right-hand side near the front of the fourth carriage. Evidence from the on-train data recorder on train Lima 53 suggests that the collision occurred near the front of the fourth carriage. Was that because it was a double? What was the Foxtrot train? Let me just check. Organisation staff. Trains involved. One Lima 53. Okay. Sorry, yes. It's incorrectly earlier stated as a 2-car 158, but it was actually two car 158, so it's a 4-car formation. Okay, fine. Yes, so the Lima train, let's see, collided with the front of the fourth carriage. Evidence from the on-train data recorder on the Lima train suggests the collision occurred at 18:42 and 57 seconds. With the Lima train travelling at 52 miles an hour and the Foxtrot train travelling at 20 miles an hour at this point. So 32 mile an hour speed differential between the two trains meant that train Lima 53 travelled forwards in heavy contact along the right-hand side of the fourth carriage of the Foxtrot train, then continued along the right-hand side of the third carriage with the leading left-hand edge of the cab of the Lima train embedding itself in the front end of this carriage. So here's a nice diagram kind of explaining what's going on. Yes, Owen O'Neill pointing out the differences between slip and slide, but yes, broadly similar. Emergency brake versus full service brake. Any helpful difference in this situation? I don't believe so, because the train was essentially sliding along anyway. So the wheels have locked up anyway at this point. The wheel slide protection wasn't helping. So here's the diagram. We've got the Foxtrot train in red, the Lima train in blue. You can see the Lima train whizzing in at speed, colliding with the rearmost car of the 4-car Foxtrot train, kind of bashing up against through into the third car, and then walloping through into the tunnel as well, because it's basically pushed the train to kind of collide with the portal of the tunnel, which you can actually see in this next image. The fourth car of Foxtrot train was displaced to the left by the impact, resulting in its leading left corner coming into heavy contact with the facing portal wall of Fisherton Tunnel. You can see the damage to the wall there. You can see a pretty hefty wallop into that coach, and a lot of damage caused. This caused a failure of the coupling between the second and third carriages of the Foxtrot train, opening a gap of 23.8 metres between the two halves of the train. Oh, interesting. The failure was actually, it caused a failure not of the coupling between the fourth and third, but actually it split the coupling between the two separate DMUs. Interesting. Okay. Both trains travelling to Fisherton Tunnel. The tunnel walls acting to keep the carriages upright, yes, which is helpful. So in a way, the tunnel, sort of helped kind of keep things in one place because the trains are moving in the same direction. It kind of kept things upright, helping limit some of the consequences, I would say. And then you can see that, there's the diagram again showing the split of the trains here, and then the diagram here showing carriages. This picture, this photograph, then showing what the damage actually looked like. You can see the displacement of the fourth coach of the Foxtrot train walloped into the tunnel portal wall, and the fact that the Lima train has kind of rotated quite substantially here in this kind of violent collision. Really, in fact, you can see the collision point. The train looks fine, and then there's an obvious collision mark here from where it's been walloped, and then the damage to the front of the vehicle there. Yeah, so a pretty hefty bit of impact. Events following the accident: the driver of the Lima train was injured in the collision, was trapped in the heavily damaged cab. So within seconds, really, certainly within minutes, the guard on the Lima train attempted to contact the driver, was unsuccessful in doing so. The guard then tried to make a railway emergency call to the signaller using the GSMR train radio in the rear cab, but again, this was unsuccessful. They then used their mobile to contact the emergency services and provided the information from 1845 until 1915 hours, when they were met by responding fire and rescue personnel. So about half an hour to the emergency response. There we go. The driver of the Foxtrot train felt the impact of the collision, immediately made a railway emergency call, reporting to the signaller at Salisbury that they believed their train had derailed. In response, the signaller placed all signals in the area to red. So a pretty rapid response from the driver in the Foxtrot train there. Good stuff. On completion of the emergency call, the driver of the Foxtrot train left their cab to investigate what had happened. That is their responsibility according to the rulebook. They walked back through the train and found the rear two carriages had become detached. Realising then that another train may have collided with train Foxtrot with their train, they returned to the cab and made another emergency call to the signaller to update them with this information. So good stuff there. Just some good driver doing their, showing what drivers can do and being absolutely on it. So lots of discussion here. Both the train operators mobilised on-call teams. Network Rail, South West Rail staff came in. RAIB were notified. Damage to rail carriages prevented the movement of passengers between some carriages. Consequently, it was necessary to evacuate passengers simultaneously in both the front and rear of the trains involved. Some passengers went to Salisbury. Passengers in the remaining carriages were evacuated from the rear of the trains and walked trackside to railway access gate. Okay, fine. So then we get the detailed analysis, and we're not going to dwell on this, but there's some good data. I'm experiencing this with you together. It's likely to be some good analysis in here explaining. We've talked previously about low adhesion events and about adhesion and how it works. We talked about coefficients of friction. Here is some nice detail, some nice data and an explanation of wheel rail adhesion and how that works. So there's kind of updates and discussion about rail contaminants, leaf fall. So there's this kind of discussion here. So post-accident examination of the up and down main lines showed that although the topography and tree species were very similar in number and density either side of the railway, the levels of railhead contamination varied, with contamination on the down line being medium to heavy at locations where it was only minimal on the adjacent up line. This demonstrates how localised changes in wheel rail adhesion conditions can be. Yeah, absolutely. So there's talk about the fact that Network Rail considers the autumn leaf season to run from the 1st of October to the 30th of December, so start of October to the middle of December, and throughout that process runs various systems to manage that, including railhead treatment trains that you'll see whizzing around looking absolutely filthy, usually a couple of Class 37s with the gubbins in the middle, and they'll be like absolutely clarted usually by the end of the day. They'll be completely covered in weathering spray. Anyway, here's an interesting picture showing the topography, which is kind of topography data showing the embankment cutting profiles, including the previously classified high risk of low adhesion site, which is the pink shaded area. This is where the broken cross bridge and tree debris is, and this is where the driver was responding to what they know is a low adhesion area. So that was what the drivers responded for, which is why they were waiting a little bit before they applied the brake, because they knew this was a high risk area. And of course, ironically, that ended up that they had a low adhesion event further on. There's also the discussion of weather and forecasting. So Met Desk Limited, not the Met Office, which is a shame. Anyway, such is life. So there's the kind of the Met Desk data. Actually, some of these have popped up recently as showing how these are used in the PWI Earthworks and Drainage seminar we just had, which is really good. So it shows some of these systems in use actually. It talks about the fact there's a scale applied into kind of managing the risk from that weather. EWAT is a kind of a discussion of kind of emergency weather call, basically, so they get all the key people in a call and talk about what the issues are, talk about what the challenges are, and what's going wrong, what's going right. And so you get this. There you are. This discussion of this is basically talking about these risk management processes, really key risk management processes. So the processes and also the physical treatment. So that the RAIB have gone into the physical treatment as well. So the railhead treatment, monitoring and reporting of low adhesion. Here is the Wessex Integrated Control Centre showing what's going on. Let's get a nice picture of the control station. It looks kind of like a regular office, but you've got these workstations of people. This is an intelligent infrastructure technician. Lovely. The autumn control desks. It's a desk they basically switch on when it's autumn time, or they change it based on seasonality. And then you'll have the signalers elsewhere. So this is an integrated. So this is the train operating company and Network Rail in the same place, kind of trying to solve problems, ostensibly. Dealing with all sorts of different challenges that you get in autumn, like for example here, wrong side track circuit failures, as in track circuits being activated or worse, deactivated because of conducting material of leaf mulch, if you have a lot of railhead contamination, or worse. So the other thing is actually that it insulates train wheels and stops the trains from activating track circuits, so that the trains don't activate the track circuit, which obviously means it's difficult. The signalling system can't then pick up where they are and avoid sending things into them. So this is, again, the process, talking about the source of information, and then the audit regime of that as well. So you can see there's forecast notices, engineering notices. There's a lot of processes here, and the RAB have kind of picked up and looked and kind of viewed these. So the identification of the immediate cause, fine. We know that the train passed the red signal at danger and could not stop before colliding with the train. Fine. So let's have a look. So the Foxtrot train was running around 5 minutes late, having been due to traverse Salisbury Tunnel Junction earlier. It was timed to pass through the junction at 18:23, but was running around 20 minutes late, while the Lima train was scheduled through the junction at 18:39, was running around 4 minutes late. The signaller believed that the Foxtrot train would pass through Salisbury Tunnel Junction before the Lima train, and so they decided it would be more efficient to provide the Foxtrot train with a clear route while holding the Lima train at the signal to protect the movement. Network Rail's policy and instructions for train regulation. That's the process by which you decide what trains go where. Train regulation. Salisbury requires signallers to give priority to passenger trains from the Dean lines unless those trains are running late by 5 or more minutes. There's often the rules about particular areas because there's empirical experience of what keeps the system moving smoothly and what aggravates drivers the most, and also where it's difficult or not difficult to start trains again if you've stopped a train, or difficult to stop a train. Okay, fine. So train drivers are provided with the facility to make a railway emergency group call, which will cause other drivers who receive the message to bring their trains to a stand immediately. The driver of the Lima train stated he was aware of this requirement, but was hoping that the train's wheel slide protection and brakes would slow the train before the junction. He was concerned that the train could be brought to a stop across the junction. By the time he saw the signal was still at red, he was becoming distressed. Soon after, he saw the Foxtrot train approaching the junction and took action to leave the cab. Quite reasonable. RAIB believes that, given the instruction, it is reasonable to assume that a driver is unlikely to decide to make a railway emergency group call until they have seen that the protecting signal has remained at red and their train has continued to travel uncontrollably. Analysis undertaken by the RAIB indicates that in such circumstances the driver of the Foxtrot train is unlikely to have received sufficient warning to bring that train to a stop before a collision. Fine. So the causal factors now. So these are the causal factors. Wheel rail adhesion was very low in the area where the driver of the Lima train applied the train's brakes. So this is kind of a key causal factor that's been identified. Other causal factors: the driver did not apply the train's brakes sufficiently early on approach to the protecting signal to avoid running onto the junction, given the prevailing levels of wheel rail adhesion. So initially, yes, wheel rail adhesion was low in the area where the driver applied the brakes. The brakes weren't applied early enough. The braking systems of the Lima train were unable to mitigate the effects of the prevailing wheel rail adhesion. Each of these factors now to be considered in turn. So, okay, the wheel rail adhesion was very low in the area. So this is kind of as a result of contaminated fallen leaf debris, much of it as a result of the weather conditions since the last railhead treatment run, coupled with an increased density of vegetation and wet conditions from the band of drizzle that recently passed over. So the RAIB commissioned the University of Sheffield to conduct a detailed tribology friction survey at 12 sample locations on the approach to the accident site. Fine, so there's some good stuff. So we talked about the weather conditions of the day. We've got here basically they went out and they plotted where the challenges were. So this is a really nice diagram explaining where that challenges were. So bearing in mind up to Broken Cross Bridge is where there's considered generally to be problems with adhesion, but actually in this case it was bad, but actually the worst areas here, indicated by the reds and blacks, are where the brake application, just by chance, where that brake application was made. Actually, it was improving again towards the tunnel, and then worse again at the very end. So, yeah, really not good. Not a lot of luck there in this situation. To give an idea what that looks like, contamination. This is about how much silver is showing. Really, lots of silver, no contamination. A bit of silver with a few little patches. Kind of light contamination. Medium contamination, it's a bit of silver showing, and then heavy contamination, no silver showing, heavy contamination. It's basically a sliding smear for the train to be running. Gareth, no, this is the slippy train situation, Gareth. Gareth in the chat, by the way. I'm not talking to myself here. So here you can see the railhead condition where the brakes were being applied. You can see very heavy contamination. It's really not good condition. So interesting. So the fact that a tree had fallen may have added to the number of leaves on the line getting smeared across as well. Wet wheel rail adhesion levels on a contaminated railhead are significantly lower than dry adhesion levels. Things like drizzle make everything absolutely worse because it creates an even slippier surface. Anyone who's walked on wet paving slabs knows that rain, that drizzle, can actually be pretty dangerous. So vegetation management. Let's talk about vegetation management very briefly. Here, discussion of how to manage vegetation. There's a whole episode here. I'm not going to do it justice by digging in and reading the text. Obviously, it's pretty text heavy. Here's some examples of what vegetation management can result in the line looking like. I mean, these pictures are a little bit warped vertically, which is annoying, but because it doesn't look quite like that. They've stretched those. RAIB, come on, don't always use the corner and hold shift. Don't stretch your images vertically. In any case, you can see what vegetation work can achieve. And here's a pretty fancy diagram showing some of the different types of the leaf fall risk assessment data scores, kind of approaching the problem site. There's a good grief. This is a table of high risk low adhesion sites with track circuit reference lines and start and finish miles and change assessment. There we are. So, and here's an RAIB diagram showing the action zones from Network Rail's on off track standard, kind of showing how you deal with certain amounts of tree growth. So action, immediate action, and then alert. So it's just sort of saying that this is how you deal with the for indeed in this case you can see sort of they're showing where the signal is and so on and so forth. I think one of the most painful pictures is this collection of pictures here, which is showing the vegetation on the approach to Fisherton Tunnel as recently as the 1970s. There is absolutely no tree growth, and on the 1st of November 2021, where there is an enormous amount of tree growth. So there's a dramatic difference in the volume of in what vegetation we're looking at here. This phenomenon of the railways being a tree-lined feature that's a new phenomenon. That's a recent phenomenon. I'm not saying that it's an entirely bad phenomenon, but it certainly has serious consequences if that vegetation is not managed, or if Network Rail is not funded well to deal with vegetation management. Ben Braithwaite here, tribology from the Greek word for rubbing. There we are. Some etymology there for you that might be familiar to those with a more sordid bent. Witness and documentary evidence shows that okay, so fine. There's this discussion. There's a bit of discussion about vegetation management. So we're going to kind of keep whizzing through here. This is where it kind of then goes to Network Rail's Wessex route had not effectively mitigated the railhead contamination. So there was a problem. Clearly, a reduced level of adhesion at the railhead. It was not being mitigated correctly, and kind of we've gone through. There's a lot of data, operational data here going through this. We're not going to dwell on it because it's the sort of thing you need to kind of read through yourself. Me reading it out loud is not great. So let's jump for the driver's braking point. Why did the driver brake later? So, basically, the driver decided to brake later to respond to a low adhesion area. That was the response, so that's kind of consistent with what other drivers would say. Testing of the brake testing for the 159 showed that in normal conditions the driver's decision would have been fine, but obviously we weren't talking about normal conditions at this situation. However, based on results from WSP doing some wheel slide protection evaluation rig testing, suggests that had the driver applied the brakes as usual at Broken Cross Bridge, it's possible that the train would not have passed the danger, the signal that was at red. And if the brakes had been applied at the fallen tree, then it's likely the train would have passed the signal at danger, but the collision would have been avoided or occurred at a much lower speed. So the driver had intended to apply the brakes at the fallen tree and missed the fallen tree, realised they missed the fallen tree, and then applied the brakes. So actually that braking position was quite a lot further on than had originally been intended. That would have been safe in normal conditions. It wasn't in these conditions. So let's kind of dig a little bit into the decision of the driver to make that braking position. And you can see here we have a variety of kind of spreads of, this is the good stuff RAIB analysis, is having a look at what the art of the possible is, and the grey line is what actually happened on the train. So we've got a couple of trains here. We've got kind of a more conventional braking approach with braking positions. We've got slightly steeper braking application, but still okay. This involves a cruise, so the release here is just the train kind of cruising here. You can see the different positions here. So the blue line is a train cruising for longer, then making a brake application. The orange is a train going at full tilt, making a brake application. And the grey line is what happened to our leaving train in the incident in question. You can see the brake application made quite substantially later than the position of the tree debris, and there's the braking point, and there you can see a bit of there's the speed. Let's have a look. That's the on-train data recorder speed. I think the line the line there is inaccurate because of the fact that it's dealing with the wheels slipping, unslipping. The dashed red line is the actual speed the train was doing. here. So the dishy dashy stuff is because of this is the on-train data recorder, so it's not actually measuring the real speed of the train. It's dealing with the wheels slipping about. So you see the wheels. It's like, oh no, it's stopped. And it's like, no, it's not. It is. Oh no, it's not. Oh no, it is. That's why that's showing like that. It's quite an interesting diagram. Oh golly, this is an annotated trace from the lever train showing the braking, the activations of the signalling system in relation to that. Other than the fallen tree, the driver's understanding was that so basically waiting for the fallen tree because expecting leaf fall. The driver then did not expect problems beyond that point, and did not feel therefore that he needed to drive more defensively. But there was information available to him that could have raised a concern about low adhesion. Weather reports, for example. And so, yeah, that's kind of, so that there's doesn't quite add up here. There's a discussion about signal spacing, which is interesting here. The signaling at Salisbury Tunnel Junction substantially predates the kind of conventional standards. So yeah, it's everything's a bit tight in this area. Interestingly, I know it's the other way around. So actually, if the distance is significantly greater than the minimum, then this may lead drivers to continuing at the permissible speed and trying to judge when to brake, with the risk of signals past at danger, or braking early and coasting, leading to an increase in journey time and loss of capacity. So this is actually it's the other way around. The signals are too spaced out here. Actually, they're too spaced out, which leads to judgments on the driver's side, which is often fine, but in this case, you result in this can it can lead to issues here where you've got a lot of different variables at play, degraded working conditions, and a mistake being made, which is kind of what's happened here, isn't it? Witness evidence indicates the driver did not brake until the later point because he did not recognise that he passed the fallen tree. RAIB cannot be certain from the available evidence how accurate the driver's appreciation was of the fallen tree's location. He had specifically been looking for the fallen tree on his journey up to London earlier in the day, having been previously told about it. Okay, so it's not the same driver who hit the tree. We were just aware of it. Okay, that's cleared that up. I thought it would. There's how visible that fallen tree is. It was not hugely visible. It was not sufficiently conspicuous in the environment on that evening because it had been kind of cut back and dealt with a bit by the time it was being passed. So this discussion of that driver awareness. Driver's acknowledgement of the AWS horn may imply some awareness of the driving task. Research has shown that such responses can be automatic with little conscious awareness. It's possible. So basically, the RAIB are saying it is possible that the driver did not see the fallen tree because he experienced a temporary loss of awareness of the driving task. So this is kind of air accident investigation type stuff here. Was there a microsleep? Was there a loss of concentration? The driver was over 63 years old, by some measure, as it seems. He was subjected to an annual medical examination in accordance with the rail industry standard, train drivers' suitability and medical fitness requirements. So you see it goes through general assessment fine. The RAIB found no evidence of distraction from electronic devices or the cab environment. Post-accident toxicology did not identify the presence of any drugs or alcohol. The RAIB has also found no evidence from the driver's roster or sleep pattern or any medical evidence of a sleep disorder to suggest that he may have been suffering from fatigue. RAIB also found no evidence of any pre-existing medical condition or medical treatment that could have caused a temporary loss of awareness or that might have affected the driver's perception, memory, or attention, although the presence of an unknown medical condition of this nature cannot be entirely discounted. So it's kind of saying, well, actually, the chances are the driver was aware of what was going on at that moment. And then we move into the train's braking systems. So this gets techie, this bit. So we were talking about sand volumes and various bits and pieces. Top-ups of sandbags. So RAIB concludes that the maintenance and preparation of the train were unlikely to have had any influence on the accident. Systems appeared to have been working fine. The electric controls of the system were working fine. It seems to be that let's see. Results from these tests suggest that neither a 6-carriage nor a 9-carriage formation breaking from the same location as the Lima train on the night of the accident would have been able to stop before the collision point, assuming they'd encountered the same initial wheel rail conditions. So it's just sort of looking at whether the improved traction you get from multiple wheels might have increased the chance of the train stopping. They don't believe so. Interesting. So this is looking at stopping distances from 55 miles an hour, different configurations. There we are. To see, unsanded train's going to slide along for longer. Dry and clean rail, it's going to stop very rapidly. And then in the middle, you've got different sanders applying different rates. So fixed rate sanders, double fixed rate sanders, and single variable rate sanders and double variable rate sanders. So there are lots of different ways to make sure that you get traction back at the wheel rail interface. You make that, you overcome the low adhesion event. So, and then some underlying factors. One of the underlying factors being Network Rail's Wessex route not effectively managing the risks of low adhesion associated with the leaf fall season. Okay, so we can go through here some the braking locations and the predicted leaf fall assessments. This is where we get into dealing with the work bank of here's the ellipse work bank in terms of overall response to. I presume this is just there's various tasks. This is all tasks, not just the leaf clearance. Is it just the off-track team? Let me have a look. Oh yeah, this is. I think this is number of tasks. I presume this is vegetation work. Let's see. Just picking through the text. It's very blocky chunks of text on here. Although the COVID-19 pandemic had restricted visual on-foot assessments of line-side vegetation, cab ride video assessment of line-side vegetation would still be completed. The section manager reported that although vegetation growth was identified, this related to work that had previously been identified and reprioritised. Off-track staff report that its increasing workload combined with a shortage of resources between May and August 21 meant that it could not address the existing work bank, and that the maintenance delivery unit was firefighting in response to arising incidents. That's the story of Network Rail's life at this point. Additionally, witness evidence is that there is also a perceived problem with the availability of contractors. Consequently, the MDU did not have the time or resources to prioritise and plan the vegetation assessment and management work. So, work bank climbing, ability to deliver, not there. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So let's kind of push forwards and understand that. There's track access, inspections. This is kind of okay, fine. We're going to keep pushing. Okay, so there's RAIB then looked at the understanding railhead treatment effectiveness. This is interesting. Okay, so witness and documentary evidence also shows the plan. Actually, let's read it. The lack of clear guidance on how long a railhead treatment remains effective has led to standard treatment patterns being used. Network Rail's Wessex route applies a regime of 2 railhead treatment runs per week, each weekday, and 1 per day at weekends. However, there appears to be little scientific justification for this pattern. The SDS did not consult others. The special. The seasons delivery specialist. That's it. Let's see. The seasons delivery specialist does not consult others, such as Network Rail's technical authority, when determining it, and witness evidence shows there was a lack of understanding within Wessex route as to whether the aspiration at weekends was for 1 run each calendar day or a maximum interval between treatment runs of 24 hours. Ouch. Okay. Witness and documentary evidence also shows the planned treatment at weekends was frequently delayed or cancelled in Network Rail's Wessex route without any assessment of the risk or alternative mitigations being implemented. This was the case for the MPV treatment on the 31st of October, despite the poor weather forecast for the weekend being received on the 29th of October. This unmitigated delay had become the accepted practice and provides further evidence of a lack of understanding of how effective railhead treatment was at controlling low adhesion risk. Ouch. So that's pretty scathing. So we have a situation where the one tool we have in our arsenal, the fantastic tool we have in our arsenal, is the railhead treatment train, was not being used effectively, and it was not running frequently enough. So, and there's a whole section about competence management. We're going to launch our way through that as well. South Western Railway had not effectively prepared its drivers for assessing and reporting low adhesion conditions. This is a possible underlying factor. Okay, so SWR not actually doing enough to prepare its drivers. Interesting, okay. RAIB has concluded that the general reduction in reporting of low adhesion was likely to have been a result of a combination of South Western Railway's briefings to drivers, changes in and confusion over reporting requirements, and the introduction of the flip charts. Well, that's talked about earlier. We won't worry about the flip charts for now. But basically, the processes in place that has impacted on drivers' appreciation of low adhesion events. There may also have been some effect due to the changes in rail services seen in autumn 2020 due to the pandemic. Similarly, if drivers had experienced reportable levels of adhesion on the day of the accident, some of these factors may have contributed to them not making any formal reports of low adhesion to the signaller. If there'd been a report of low adhesion that day, the signaller would have been required to broadcast GSMR messages to all drivers warning them of the conditions, and this might have altered the risk perception of the Lima train driver. I think that's quite a clear finding from the RAIB there. The TPWS installation at the signal, the red signal, was not compliant with network rail requirements for new signalling design. Interesting. So it should have incorporated a higher approach speed, and this would improve the effectiveness of TPWS in preventing collisions. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So there's some underlying issues over on risk assessments, not accounting for low adhesion sites. That's interesting as well. Nor does the identification of a new rail kind of low adhesion site trigger a reassessment of signal overrun risk. Oh, that's a shortcoming. I hope it's going to be resolved. So let's look at factors affecting the severity of the consequences. So this is the crashworthiness section. We've got some various trains that have smashed into each other. Parked up here. Here is the view of the cab. You can just see it's additional damage was caused by the fire and rescue service during the extraction of the injured train driver. So there's substantial initial damage there to the cab. There's a loss of survival space in the driver's cab because there's not actually enough good quality cab protection for the driver here. So the initial impact between the two trains was between the front left corner of the driver's cab and a point around leading right hand side passenger doors of the fourth carriage of the Foxtrot train. Fine. The driver's cab suffered a loss of survival space that was likely to have led to serious or fatal injury to the driver had he not vacated his seat just before impact. Examination of the surviving parts of the cab structure from the leading carriage showed that the front left cab corner pillar became overloaded and failed. This pillar would have carried much of the force resulting from the collision. This is talking about the fact that the design was based on an older UIC standard, 566 crashworthiness standard. Fine, lovely. Unlike modern standards, it did not define specific collision scenarios to assess the crashworthiness performance of the carriage in the event of an accident. So, what happened to the body structure when different loads hit it. So, as with our famous HST, the 158 is not actually designed to meet any specific crashworthiness requirements, although it's it's a stronger vehicle, of course. Nevertheless, as the Class 158 body structure was an early application of welded aluminium to UK train construction, a considerable amount of work was undertaken at that time to understand its crashworthiness performance. Part of this work included assessing its crashworthiness performance against an emerging internal BRB standard, British Rail standard, structural requirements for the bodies of multiple unit vehicles, which contained collision scenarios. A 1989 BR report concluded that when assessed against those requirements, the Class 158 is not a good crashworthy structure. High force levels and low energy absorption at low impact velocities are evident, with deceleration levels approximately twice the suggested values. In 1991, the Class 158 cab structure was crush tested in a controlled environment. The BR concluded that the energy absorbed by the cab ends in the test was sufficiently high to meet BR's latest standard, but the peak forces generated during the test were much higher than in comparable steel vehicles, and the mode of deformation rather aggressive. So it's pointing out that aluminium not performing quite as they would like it to here. As the proof strength of a Class 158 cab structure is likely to be similar to a modern equivalent, RAIB has not made a specific recommendation relating to the driver's cab of the Class 158. The more general question on the crashworthiness performance of traction and rolling stock, which predates modern crashworthiness requirements, was identified in Recommendation 19 of the RAIB investigation into the accident at Carmont in Scotland. Yes, absolutely. The other issue here is the internal sliding doors in the 158's caused a lot of issues. So the 158 and 159 trains have their exterior doors located at each end of the body. The area adjacent to these doors, commonly referred to as the vestibule, is separated from the main saloon area by biparting sliding doors. The purpose of these doors is to improve passenger comfort by isolating the saloon areas from drafts when the exterior doors are open. Absolutely. Each saloon to vestibule door has 2 leaves. These meet in the middle of the doorway and are power operated such that each leaf opens to its respective side. Vestibule doors are electrically operated, and each leaf moves on runners located above the door aperture. Internal CCTV image showing passengers trying to prise vestibule door open in the rear carriage of Lima 53. Oh, golly. Okay. Analysis of CCTV footage recovered from the carriage and interviews with witnesses identified that in the aftermath of the accident, at least 3 of these doors were unavailable to passengers. Although no injuries occurred because of these doors becoming jammed, the carriages were in a tunnel and some diesel fuel had been spilled. Blockage of otherwise viable egress routes is therefore evidently undesirable and may result in passengers panicking and or injuring themselves when seeking alternative routes as part of an uncontrolled evacuation. Examination of the carriages after recovery found 2 further jammed vestibule sliding doors. They were the trailing door of... okay, fine, yeah. There we go. There's a discussion of the role of the safety authority here. They're basically saying that R&R took some action, but did not. Yeah, it's basically saying, I don't know. For me, it's a case of like the RR is just toothless, really, when it comes to dealing with this stuff, because ultimately there's only so much Network Rail can do with the funding that it has available to it. So there's a section here talking about previous occurrences of a similar character, so it's fine. There's a few different discussions and picking out the relevance there. So the summary of the conclusions, as you can see here, we know the immediate cause, we know the causal factors and the underlying factors. We've kind of gone through that detail. Previous recommendations that had the potential to address one or more factors in the report. So it's talking about operational management. Again, there is a failure in operational management here. That was a serious problem. And then the cab of trains. Looking at modern crashworthiness standards and how to respond to those. So let's see what's interesting here is we get to see what's been happening since that recommendation was made in Carmen. So the RR reported that it hosted a meeting on the 6th of April 2022 with owners and operators of Class 43 high-speed trains together with government bodies and RSSB to consider how Recommendation 19 should be addressed. Recommendation 19 from the Carmen report, if you don't remember, by the way, was to understand the risks from the cab, mitigate similar risks associated with the operation of other types of mainline rolling stock without decent crashworthiness or any crashworthiness or modern crashworthiness compliance. But it's about a proper evaluation of that risk. After reviewing the information provided by the bodies and organisations responsible for implementing Recommendation 19, the RR concluded that, in accordance with the Railway Accident Investigation and Reporting Regulation 2005, RSSB had taken the recommendation into consideration and is taking action to implement it. The recommendation remains open at this time of report. So basically, they had a meeting and that's enough for them to think that they've satisfied the requirements. Come on, RSSB, do better. Do better. Okay, so actions reported is already taken or in progress relevant to this report. So there's a bit of discussion of some of the stuff post-Carmen, really. A lot of this training, more autumn management stuff. Fine. Wessex Route already kind of taking actions as a result of the joint industry investigation. So basically this report's come obviously a while after the incident. So there's lots of stuff that the industry responded internally more quickly because it can. So it's having it had its first national low adhesion conference in February 2023, Network Rail. So kind of that's good, but obviously not enough. Okay, so there's kind of some discussions of stuff that's going on. South Western Railways has made some changes. Yeah, okay, so fine. GWR as well. Yeah, okay, fine, grand. I'm conscious of time, so I'm kind of hammering through this. So, what are the recommendations? Because we've kind of understood what the problems are here. Yeah, so first recommendations. Recommendation number 1. Network Rail should consider the findings from this report to inform a review of the processes, standards and guidance documents and supporting management arrangements related to the management of leaf fall low adhesion risk. The review should result, where appropriate, in the creation or revision of documents suitable to support Network Rail staff in having appropriate understanding of the risks when creating autumn working arrangements. Plenty of other detail in that recommendation. Next recommendation, Network Rail, building on the work that has already started in this area, should develop an appropriate competency framework for the role of the season delivery specialist. This is painfully close to what was being said at Carmen, after Carmen as well. And the third recommendation is Network Rail should produce a time-bound programme to train and assess the competence of off-track maintenance staff in the requirements of competence management for drainage and line side. Okay, fine. I think Mona Sohota will be on that. But yes, so there's clearly some competence issues here. Recommendation 4. Network Rail, working in cooperation with the train operators, RSSB and other relevant stakeholders, should undertake research into real-time data that could be used to give an indication of wheel rail adhesion conditions on its network and how this could be used to support operational decisions. Yeah, some innovation could take place there, which would be very useful. Whether it's on track or on train-mounted kit, that's certainly worthwhile. Recommendation 5. Network Rail should undertake research to better understand the factors that affect the rate of build-up of leaf fall contamination, the relationship between different types of contamination and low railhead adhesion, and the effectiveness and longevity of currently available alternative railhead treatment regimes. Well, there's that episode. There was about 200 different options they had for different sorts of treatments, going from like high-pressure water jets to lasers to God knows what else. Lots to think about there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 recommendations. So recommendation 6 is looking at the signalling standard to ensure that signal overrun risk assessments include high risk of low adhesion sites. Recommendation 7, Network Rail should review the decision not to retrospectively apply the TPWS standard to existing signals. And number 8, recommendation 8, South Western Railway should review its arrangements for training and briefing drivers to ensure they are able to effectively identify areas of low adhesion. Recommendation 9, the Rail Delivery Group, working with the train operating companies and RSSB, should create a framework and mechanism for the assessment of future technologies to enable trains to better cope with low adhesion when braking. Okay. And recommendation 10 is to the Roscoes. Portable gauge trains and Evershort Rail, working in conjunction with the operators of Class 158 and 159 trains, should review the design of the internal sliding doors on these carriages and determine if there's a practical means to prevent these doors becoming jammed in the event of a collision. They should develop a time-bound plan to implement measures identified by this review. So there you go. 10 recommendations. What else is there to look at? And that's that, folks. That's that. So the question really at that point is, what do you think? That we've gone through the report, we've got an understanding of kind of what's happened. Gareth asked a very interesting question. What follow-up is there by RAIB on their recommendations? Or do they make recommendations, then forget everything about them until the next accident? Legally, that's basically what they have to do. They make recommendations, and that's all they're allowed to do. There's no legal obligation outside of the Rail Accident and Investigation Act, whatever it is. There has to be a response, but there's no legal obligation to carry out and act on the recommendations from the RAIB. They have no teeth. They're not regulated. They have no teeth to chase organisations to have delivered the recommendations. They merely, all they can do is make the recommendations and hope that people like you and me and ministers or others hold the industry to account, or are held to account by journalists, activists, engineers, whoever it is. That's a good question. Barry Shepherd's asking why they didn't recommend trimming vegetation back. Yes, it wasn't a recommendation really, was it, about vegetation management? I think there was nothing about, it's a shame that the RIB cannot make a recommendation like government should fund Network Rail properly to carry out effective vegetation management. I can understand why that isn't the case, but yeah, there wasn't much about vegetation management there, was there? Despite it being picked up as a cause, a contribution, as the RIB implied or explicitly stated by their series of pictures pointing out the before and after in terms of vegetation. So Cora says, could a lack of follow-up be later considered criminal negligence at a later accident? Possibly. Yeah, I suppose I'm not a lawyer, so I don't exactly know how that would work, but I suppose perhaps that could be something that you could be challenged on as not satisfying your legal requirements under as a competent person. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. Any other thoughts? Yeah, no. Hopefully that, I don't know. It's certainly interesting for me to go through that and get a feel for some of the challenges that occurred there. Yeah, I think vegetation management is something that I expected that to be picked up more than it was actually. It's certainly the recommendation end, but we can see that actually a lot of the issues here are operational. They're operational challenges. Those aren't necessarily about money. The decisions about running the railhead treatment train, that's pretty shocking to see that. It's upsetting. It's something that's obviously a well-used piece of kit that has obvious positive effects. Maybe pick up some questions momentarily, but I'm gonna draw things to a close at this point. Everyone, thanks to all the audio-only listening folks. It's good to it is good to have you along for the ride. Do continue to review and send comments or answer the queries or whatever it is. I don't know where we're at in the Spotify tables anymore. I certainly don't. I never receive any notifications anyway. But maybe I should start doing things through Spotify and not through Podbean. Anyway, I don't know what the benefits and disbenefits would be to that. The people in the producers in the Discord server, let me know. Talking of which, GarethEnnis.uk/Discord is where you can be in the Discord server. Come join us. It's chaos in there. PayPal.me/GarethEnnis for loose change and abuse. GarethEnnis.uk/merch for the now limited edition merchandise. I will update the graphics of the RailNow logo in there at some point. And Patreon.com/GarethEnnis to support me and can make more of this happen. And also, if you're a Patreon supporter, you very much are one of the producers. You get to tell me, you get to boss me around. We have, what have we got going? We have, previously we had 8,685 YouTube subscribers. We're now currently, that was louder than I intended it to be. We are currently at 9,300. In fact, are we? Because if I go here, let me press F5. No, we're not. We're at 9,304 subscribers. So people right now can subscribe, and the numbers will go up. Look at that. You can see there's a nice little if we look kind of this year, you can see we've had a nice, since I kind of made the point of please subscribe, it has worked. People have subscribed. We're climbing. We want to get to the 10,000 number. Come on, we want to get there. If you look at the whole lifetime, you can see that not many subscribers, 0. And then a bit of a climb, that's nice. And then it climbed up to 1,000. I made a big leap in, what was that leap? A leap in the early part of 2021. And then we crossed the 5,000 threshold in the later part of 2021. Little spikes here and there. Look, a couple more of you have subscribed. Thanks to those people who've just subscribed. That's exciting, isn't it? And then here we are at 9,306 subscribers. We want to get to 10,000 by the end of the year. Come on, folks, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. Anyway, so thanks for that. Next week, Zach is joining us. Very good friend of the show. Episode 193. An illustrated history of Jersey's tramways and railways. This is going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to this. It's something totally different, something nice, a bit of nice history, some interesting stuff, and some rise and fall type stories to understand what was going on the island of Jersey. So that should be interesting. A nice relaxed one, I think. Well worth joining in. It'll be a nice live one. That's next week. I'll see you all there. Some last sort of points being picked up. So Jack, HSC Productions, would it not be better for the RR to investigate accidents, as they would have the power to enforce recommendations, stop talks operating if they're following? No, I don't think so. The RR is not impartial, and they're also fairly toothless. So I don't think there'd be any benefit to that. There'd be the risk that the RR would try to manage the politics too much. The RR are already a very politicized organisation, so I think there'd be too much challenge that the RR would not be an objective, impartial report. No, the RAIB are an excellent organisation and should remain exactly as they are and doing what they do. What we need to have is a commitment to delivering on the recommendations. I think that's the challenge. On which note, given that it's 21:34 and high time we all went to bed, I'm going to leave you all in peace and quiet. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you all next week. Cheerio!